Iran consistently grabs headlines due to conflicts, threats, clandestine alliances, and nuclear ambitions. However, what many don't realize is that Iran's narrative is already inscribed within the pages of the Bible, detailing both its origin and its ultimate conclusion. Indeed, Iran, though under its ancient designation of Persia, makes appearances throughout the Bible, from the book of Genesis to the prophetic accounts of the end times. The Bible not only provides insight into Iran's beginnings, but also reveals its predestined role in one of the most ominous and dreaded passages of Revelation, the War of Gog and Magog, a coalition destined to challenge Israel in the final days. However, before it assumes the role of a prophetic adversary, Persia was divinely chosen to liberate God's people, reconstruct the temple, and realize Daniel's prophecies. Stay tuned until the end, as today we are about to explore what very few dare to reveal: Iran's authentic role within God's overarching design, from its genesis to its culmination. Let's begin. It all commences in the book of Genesis. In the aftermath of the Great Flood, God grants humanity a new beginning and unveils the origins of the nation of Persia. Noah and his family were the sole survivors on earth, and his 3 sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, became the progenitors of new nations. In chapter 10, we encounter the first map of the world's nations, where we read, "This is the account of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, Noah's sons, who themselves had sons after the flood. From these, the coastlands were populated, each according to their own languages, families, and nations." This genealogy provides a map illustrating the lineage of Noah's sons. Here, we discover 2 patriarchs who would eventually give rise to the Persian Empire, Madai and Elam. Madai was Japheth's son, and from him emerged the Medes, a people who established themselves in the northern mountains, a region now encompassed by modern-day Iran. From these northern Iranian mountains, Madai's descendants gradually expanded, establishing villages, clans, and tribes. They were independent, rugged mountaineers, renowned for their resilience and robust tribal organization. Madai is the direct ancestor of the ancient northern heartland of Iran. The second name is Elam, son of Shem. His descendants, the Elamites, settled in southwestern Iran, in fertile lands near the Persian Gulf. However, Genesis 14 recounts the Bible's first major international war, in which 4 eastern kings, including Chedorlaomer, king of the Elamites, united and invaded Canaan. They pillaged cities, enslaved people, and captured Lot, Abraham's nephew. Elam was not a small, insignificant tribe. It was a formidable nation, and according to Scripture, the first nation to attack God's people of faith. But Abraham didn't simply stand by and watch. With only 318 trained servants, he pursued the invaders, launching a night attack that resulted in their defeat. He rescued Lot, freed the captives, and humiliated the eastern kings. It was an improbable victory, a triumph that defied human logic and conveyed a powerful message. No eastern power can triumph against those who have God's favor. However, the people of Elam did not disappear. Centuries passed, generations were born and died, and those tribes, once defeated by Abraham, grew in number. The Elamites and the Medes shared the same land, the ancient terrain of eastern Mesopotamia. One dwelled southwest in the fertile plains of Elam, while the other inhabited the mountainous north, where the harshness of the region shaped the character of the Medes. As empires rose and fell, another power was quietly taking shape. First, clans emerged, then kingdoms, and finally an empire, the Persian Empire. Though they were pagan nations, they were never outside God's plan. Through the prophets Isaiah and Jeremiah, 2 significant prophecies concerning them were declared. The first prophecy, spoken through Isaiah, revealed that God would utilize Elam and Media as instruments to punish Babylon. Babylon, which had destroyed Jerusalem and burned down its temple, would not escape judgment. God had already determined who would bring about its downfall: the United Peoples of Iran. Yet, the second prophecy was even more astounding. God would not only use Persia to inflict punishment, but he would also wield Persia as an instrument of liberation. God announced through the prophet Isaiah that a pagan Persian king, yet unborn, would serve as his chosen agent to free Israel from exile and decree the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Isaiah even named him more than 150 years before he was even born. This is what the Lord says to his anointed, to Cyrus. And both prophecies were fulfilled with terrifying precision. In the 8th century BC, Deioces, king of the Medes, united the tribes of Elam and Madai, establishing the first imperial capital on Iranian soil, Ecbatana. His grandson, Cyaxares, took the next significant step, reforming the army and transforming it into a war machine powerful enough to destroy Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire, one of Israel's most brutal enemies. The prophecy began to be fulfilled. God was raising up Persia from within as his instrument of judgment and redemption. Yet, even as Persia grew in power, God had already revealed its destiny through prophetic dreams, and the first to perceive it clearly was a young Hebrew prisoner living in Babylon, Daniel. It all began when the Babylonian army, led by King Nebuchadnezzar, marched into Jerusalem. The city walls fell, the temple was plundered, and thousands were taken into slavery in distant lands. Daniel was among them. He was just a teenager when he was torn from his home and brought to the court of Babylon, the most powerful empire in the world at that moment. But there, in the darkness, God chose him. Surrounded by the corrupt splendor of the royal palace, Daniel remained untainted, and because of his faithfulness, God granted him something given to no other captive, a gift of visions that spoke not only about his own time, but about the course of all human history. At the very heart of the empire responsible for Jerusalem's destruction, Daniel began to see how God would raise another kingdom, one destined to replace Babylon and play a crucial role in the fate of his own people. The Persian Empire. And it all began with dreams. While Daniel served in Nebuchadnezzar's court, the king was deeply troubled by a disturbing dream. A giant statue crafted from different metals towered before him, radiating an indescribable glory and menace. Terrified, the king demanded not only someone who could interpret this dream, but who could reveal it without first hearing it. None of Babylon's wise men could accomplish this task, but God's prophet was ready, and they brought Daniel before the king. With the authority of heaven itself, Daniel stood before the most powerful ruler on earth and revealed what no Babylonian wise man could unravel. He described the dream exactly and proclaimed a revelation that would forever alter the world's destiny. You, O king, are the head of gold. But after you, another kingdom will rise, one inferior to yours, depicted by the chest and arms of silver. That figure of silver wasn't just one nation, but two arms, two mighty forces bound together in one body. The Medes and the Persians united yet unequal, because the Persian arm would rise stronger and take control. The prophecy was clear. Babylon would fall, and the throne would pass on to a new empire chosen by God himself. Young Daniel, living far from his homeland, watched God's visions come true. Soon, his vision would become reality, because the king God had foretold long ago through Isaiah was about to arise from the highlands of Persia. His name was Cyrus. Cyrus, the young Persian king, conquered Media, united the kingdoms into the Medo-Persian Empire, and steadily grew to become the greatest power of his time, finally turning his gaze upon Babylon. The prophesied day arrived, yet it wasn't a battle like any other. One night, King Belshazzar, grandson of Nebuchadnezzar, hosted a banquet with 1,000 nobles, and amidst the frenzy, committed an unforgivable act. He ordered the sacred vessels his grandfather had looted from the temple in Jerusalem to be brought out, and they toasted with them in honor of false gods. Suddenly, an invisible hand appeared, writing 4 words onto the palace wall. Mene, mene, tekel, upharsin. The king turned pale. No one understood the meaning of these words until they summoned Daniel, who revealed their terrifying message. God has numbered the days of your reign and brought it to an end. Your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and Persians. Even as these words were uttered, the prophecy began to unfold. The armies of Cyrus the Great, king of Persia, had diverted the Euphrates River and were quietly entering the city along the dry riverbed. The gates of Babylon stood unlocked. God himself had thrown them open. That very night, King Belshazzar was slain, and the prophecy was fulfilled. Babylon fell into Persian hands. The Jews, who for 70 years had wept by the rivers of Babylon, now witnessed an impossible dream come true. A foreign pagan king decreed that they could return home to Jerusalem. But Cyrus did more than permit their return. He financed the rebuilding of the temple and sent the Jewish leaders back with royal support. Zerubbabel, descendant of David's royal line, and Joshua, the high priest. These men would lay down the first foundations, finally restoring the place where God's name dwelled. Thus, Persia became the one nation not to destroy Israel, but to rebuild it. But to Daniel, God unveiled another, even more frightening vision about Persia. In this vision, from the chaotic waters arose 4 monstrous beasts. The second beast looked like a massive bear, raised up on one side with 3 ribs clutched between its teeth, and a voice thundered from heaven, "Get up and eat your fill of flesh." The bear symbolized the empire destined to follow Babylon, Media and Persia. Yet, the beast leaned to one side because Persia would ultimately dominate Media, and the 3 ribs represented its greatest conquests, Lydia, Babylon, and Egypt. Each devoured one after another in Persia's relentless march of expansion. This vision was fulfilled with chilling accuracy, for after conquering the kingdom of Lydia in Asia Minor and Babylon itself, Persia did not slow down. It set its sights on Egypt. Under Cambyses II, son of Cyrus, Persian armies marched across the Sinai Desert and smashed Pharaoh Psamatich III in the Battle of Pelusium. Egypt, Israel's ancient oppressor, fell before the Persian Empire, and thus the 3rd rib was torn from its place. But these visions weren't finished yet. Years later, standing on the banks of the Ulai River, Daniel was seized once again by a vision, one far more precise, clearer, and even more terrifying. Before his eyes appeared a ram with 2 horns, but one horn stood taller than the other, and the taller horn had grown up later. The ram charged fiercely toward the west, toward the north, and toward the south, and none could oppose him. Then a voice explained the meaning. The 2-horned ram that you saw represents the kings of Media and Persia. Again, Persia takes center stage in the divine plan, though this time not as an ally, but as a mighty empire, conquering without resistance and charging forth like an unleashed beast. And one chilling detail stands out clearly. One horn stood taller, an unmistakable hint at Persia's dominance over Media. 2 peoples, 1 empire, but only one dominant throne. As the vision continued, suddenly from the west, a goat appeared, swift as the wind, with a single prominent horn right between his eyes. In a flash, he charged the ram, knocking him down and trampling him underfoot. It was the prophecy of the next empire. Greece, under Alexander the Great, would overthrow Persia with supernatural speed. At that moment, Daniel didn't yet know who the goat represented, but he understood clearly that Persia, the greatest, most glorious empire the world had yet seen, would one day fall. But that ending had not yet come. For in its days of splendor, Persia was not only invincible, it was the center of the world. Its reign stretched from India to Ethiopia, and in the days of King Ahasuerus, the throne of the greatest empire on earth was established in the majestic city of Susa, in the heart of Elam, what we now call southwestern Iran. And it was precisely in Susa that one of the Bible's most unexpected miracles happened. The great empire would be conquered by a single woman. King Ahasuerus held a magnificent banquet that lasted for 6 months, then invited all the people of Susa to a final grand celebration lasting 7 days. In a moment of pride and excess, he ordered Queen Vashti, his wife, to be brought before them to display her beauty, but Vashti refused. Humiliated before his entire empire, the king banished her. Then, his advisors suggested a radical solution, searching throughout the kingdom for a new queen from among the young virgins. The most beautiful would be taken to the palace, where they would undergo a full year of preparation before being presented to the king. One of those young women was Hadassah, though no one knew her by that name, an orphan born among the exiled Jews. She had been secretly raised by her cousin Mordecai, and in the palace she was given a new name, Esther. Esther captured the king's favor, and without knowing she was a Jew, Ahasuerus crowned her queen of Persia. Meanwhile, hidden in the shadows of the palace, a deadly enemy emerged, Haman, a descendant of the Amalekites, ancient enemies of Israel. Haman had risen to the highest position next to the king, and when everyone was ordered to kneel before him, Mordecai, Esther's cousin, refused. Proud and vindictive, Haman was not satisfied with punishing just Mordecai. Instead, he plotted to annihilate an entire people. What began as personal revenge quickly turned into genocide. Haman approached the king and warned him of a strange nation scattered throughout his kingdom, a people with peculiar laws who did not obey the empire's decrees, and persuaded the king that they should be destroyed. With lies, he convinced the king and sealed the deadly decree with the royal ring. In less than a year, every Jew in Persia was destined for death, men, women, and children. Chaos spread throughout the Jewish community, and Mordecai quickly sent word urging Esther to act. When Esther heard about the decree, she felt trapped. To save her people, she would have to approach the king uninvited, a practice that carried an instant death penalty unless the king chose to show mercy by extending his scepter. Finally, Esther decided to put her life on the line and went before the king without being summoned. Yet, God granted her favor in his sight. The king raised his scepter toward her, but Esther wasn't hasty. She knew timing was everything. She invited the king and Haman to a banquet and then to a second feast. It was there, at that second banquet, where she unleashed the truth like a sharpened blade. If we had only been sold into slavery, she said, I would have remained silent. But a decree has gone out ordering the extermination of my people and myself. The king leapt to his feet. Who would dare do this? Esther replied, Our enemy is this wicked man, Haman. The king's face burned with fury. Haman fell to his knees, begging desperately for his life, but it was already too late. On the very gallows he had built for Mordecai, Haman himself was hanged. Yet, the danger had not passed. The edict remained intact because Persian law could never be overturned. So, Esther and Mordecai brought forward an even bolder plan, a new decree. The king signed it, and throughout the provinces the Jews were granted the right to defend themselves. The day once marked for their annihilation instead became a day of triumph. Without realizing it, the Persian Empire had become a fortress, a throne, and a shield for God's people. After Esther's miracle in Susa, Persia seemed to fade into the background of biblical narrative. Centuries rolled by, empires rose and fell, and Rome took center stage. Yet, Persia's silence did not mean its absence. Centuries later, as the world quietly awaited the coming of the Messiah, Persia would once again emerge. In the Gospel of Matthew, we read a passage that has been repeated millions of times, yet rarely understood in its full depth. Magi came from the east into Jerusalem, asking, Where is the newborn King of the Jews? We have seen his star rise in the east and have come to worship him. Who were these Magi, and why would they travel so far, guided only by a sign? The original word magi, from the Greek magoi, was used to describe learned astronomers and priests from the East. Although their nationality isn't explicitly mentioned in Scripture, evidence strongly suggests they came from the ancient lands of the Medo-Persian Empire, the area known today as Iran. These magi belong to a highly influential religious caste in Persia, renowned for their knowledge of the stars, ancient writings, and prophetic traditions passed down for generations. While they were not kings, they were men of science, authority, and spiritual insight. It's quite probable that among the scrolls they studied were the writings of the prophet Daniel, who had served centuries earlier at the courts of Babylon and Persia. Daniel not only interpreted dreams in King Nebuchadnezzar's court, but he also prophesied the coming of the Messiah with mathematical precision in Daniel 9. From the issuing of the decree to rebuild and restore Jerusalem until the coming of Messiah the Prince, there shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. If these wise men knew Daniel's visions, it's very likely they understood the Messiah's arrival was imminent. When they saw the star, they realized immediately the promised son had been born, but the most powerful part was their response. They left everything behind to follow that star, journeyed across deserts, and arrived in Bethlehem carrying 3 special gifts, each rich with prophetic meaning: gold, declaring his kingship; frankincense, recognizing his divinity; and myrrh, foreshadowing his sacrifice and death. Without realizing it, these wise men revealed the greatest mystery in the universe. This child would be king, he would be God, and he would be a lamb. While Jerusalem scholars remained silent and Herod plotted to kill him, the wise men from the East became the first to recognize prophecy fulfilled, bowing before the Messiah.